Imagine a world where darkness reigns, a strange snow perpetually falls, where the whimsy of swirling currents determines the patterns of life, and yet life flourishes. It is a world seen by few, the underwater world of Glacier Bay. Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve encompasses 3.3 million acres of fjords, mountains, and coastline. It is a place where the Earth still chafes under the lingering effects of the Little Ice Age. It is an evolving landscape, partially released from the grip of glaciers in the past 300 years. Every year, visitors come to the bay for the scenery, the wildlife, and the cultural experience of the Hoona Tlingit homeland. They also come for the solitude. Yet few will venture beyond the reflections of the landscape to the world beneath. Join us as we travel into the underwater world of Glacier Bay to discover some of its secrets. Glacier Bay is a valley carved by glaciers now flooded by ocean water. It is here in the mountains the glaciers that carved the bay were born. Then, in the 1700s, the glaciers began to retreat, pulling back 60 miles into the interior in the fastest glacial retreat in recorded history. Seawater flooded in behind the rapidly retreating ice, creating a long fjord. As we look into the depths of the bay, we see the glaciers carved submarine canyons that plunge to over 1,400 feet deep, leaving an underwater landscape that mimics what we see on land. The shallow bottom at the entrance to the bay, left by the retreating glaciers, and the extreme tides in southeast Alaska combine to create a complex and powerful system of currents. These currents and the nutrients they carry determine just where and how much life can be found in these waters. Glacier Bay is perhaps one of the most productive fjord ecosystems on the planet. This richness is due to the presence of tiny plant-like organisms known as phytoplankton. The long days of spring and summer allow these organisms to bloom in massive quantities. Even though smaller than a pinpoint, they reproduce in such profusion, the water becomes green due to the chlorophyll in their bodies. Phytoplankton is the backbone of the food web. Harnessing the sun's energy through photosynthesis, it fuels all life in this marine environment, from the smallest copepod to the giant humpback whales. Some parts of the bay are more hospitable to life than others. Glacier Bay extends like a Y, 65 miles into the surrounding mountains. In the upper reaches of the bay, ice meets the sea. As it moves, a glacier pulverizes the rock beneath it. The resulting silt is carried away by streams and calving ice that flow away from the glacier. During the spring, summer, and fall, this fresh water and ice release huge amounts of sediment, making it a challenging world. Only a few hardy species can cope with these harsh conditions. Phytoplankton reproduce in the thin, rich surface layer, providing food for dense populations of barnacles and mussels. As we move into the depths, dim sunlight gives way to total darkness. Visibility becomes obscured by a perpetual blizzard of marine snow. Made up of glacial silt and organic materials that clump together, Marine snow transports nutrients from the surface to deeper waters. The snow and years of sediment accumulation blanket the bottom in powdery soft layers that can be hundreds of feet thick. The lack of solid substrate makes survival in this moonscape difficult. Considered prime real estate, rocky areas are densely colonized. Soft corals make their way into the far reaches of the bay on currents during their larval stage. The corals are a colony of individual animals that provide structural habitat for other animals when protective housing is limited. They can reach as much as 9 feet in height and can live to be over 100 years old. This prickleback uses the deep sediments to make a home. A basket star is well suited to this environment. It spreads its arms like a net, collecting plankton from the water for food. This unique setting, dominated by darkness, is a place of biological catastrophe. For creatures that live attached to the bottom, there is no guarantee that conditions will not change. A sudden increase in the freshwater runoff or a sudden drop in water temperature can doom whole groups of organisms. Once a thriving colony, all that exists of this group of barnacles is their exoskeletons that provide homes for shrimp, scallops, and other small creatures. If an animal can move, it has more options. This sculpin glides through the darkness in search of its next meal. The occasional tanner crab keeps on the prowl to find food. Halibut and other flatfish prefer a silty bottom to lie partially buried, waiting for unsuspecting prey. The silt-laden waters in this area teem with small schooling fish, krill, and microscopic animals called zooplankton. Shockwaves created during glacial calving and the massive freshwater runoff flush these creatures up from the deep, where they become easy prey for hungry seabirds. What spells doom for some provides sanctuary for others. Harbor seals congregate each spring during pupping season on the glacial ice floes. They come here for safety. Their primary predator, killer whales, seldom venture into these ice-choked waters because it's hard for them to echolocate their prey. If there is one thing that is constant in Glacier Bay, it is change. The glacial retreat that started at the end of the Little Ice Age has recently accelerated at an alarming rate, likely due to global climate change. Most of the glaciers in the bay that once terminated in the sea are now fully grounded on dry land. This prevents the mixing of waters from glacial calving, which affects the amount of food available in the shallower areas of the fjords. It also limits the ice flows that provide refuge for harbor seals. How these changes will play out in the long term, we do not know. Scientists continue to study these rapid changes and their impacts. Clearly, Glacier Bay's pristine marine ecosystem is being affected by our rapidly warming climate. An additional consequence, less visible than melting glaciers, yet potentially more devastating to marine life, is ocean acidification. The increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide worldwide makes all ocean waters more acidic. But fjord ecosystems like Glacier Bay are especially vulnerable. The increasing cold freshwater runoff from the melting glaciers makes the bay even more acidic. This altered water chemistry prevents organisms from creating their protective shells. Without these shells, they cannot survive. A disruption in the food web has ripple effects all the way to the apex predators. If food becomes scarce, the very things we come to Glacier Bay to enjoy, the abundant marine wildlife, will slowly vanish. Moving down bay away from the glaciers, changes on the landscape are apparent. Plants begin to reclaim the land, and one finds more wildlife. Beneath the reflections, life has more opportunity. Throughout the spring and summer, sunlight penetrates the surface of the water to a depth of 100 feet, sometimes more. There is less sediment in the water, making feeding easier for filter feeders like these cloud sponges, which must strain the water through their pores to feed. These sponges grow to enormous size, some reaching more than 3 feet across. Their Swiss cheese-like structure provides a perfect home for this eel pout. Currents deliver a constant supply of nutrients into the calmer, sunlit waters of the mid-bay. This is an ideal environment for zooplankton, like these copepods. This microscopic nutrient soup is the basis for Glacier Bay's renowned productivity. Though odd in appearance in this phase, many of these larval zooplankton will develop into more familiar creatures. This larva will mature into a Dungeness crab. This translucent hermit crab larva will mature into a colorful crab. After going through a complicated life cycle, this jelly larva will develop into a beautiful jelly, provided it is not eaten first. Everywhere you look in the mid-bay, it's dinner time. As if eager to gobble as much as it can, this sea cucumber barely takes time to clean its bushy tentacles before waving them around again to catch more plankton. Barnacles begin life as free-swimming larvae and then settle in large colonies where they use their specialized legs to strain food from the water. These sea pens unfurl their polyps in search of food. Described by some as a roving stomach, a comb jelly searches for zooplankton. It propels itself through the water with the rhythmic movement of its cilia, tiny plates arranged like teeth on a comb that run the length of its body. The waving cilia collect all available light, reflecting the entire color spectrum and outlining this predator like a neon sign. The underwater world becomes a colorful mosaic of life. Fusitriton snails lay spirals of eggs. Unable to build its own shell, this hermit crab acquired an abandoned snail shell and unwittingly picked up a group of hitchhiking barnacles. A forest of anemones stands 4 feet tall. These anemones pump water into their bodies, allowing them to stretch to incredible lengths, yet remain flexible, shedding the effects of strong currents, much like willows in a storm. Their height gives them an advantage to feed in a place with less competition from smaller filter feeders. Like a true eccentric, the decorator crab creates a bold ensemble drawn directly from the world around it. In its fashion, there is function. This outfit helps the crab blend into its surroundings, keeping it safe from predators. This is an eat or be eaten world. A sunflower sea star, the largest of all the sea stars, reaching more than 3 feet across, prowls looking for its next meal and settles for a sea urchin. Mussels seek sanctuary from the voracious sea stars in the intertidal zone, the area between high and low tides. Though they are exposed to air twice daily, Mussels survive by taking in moisture before closing their shells. A predator, like the sea star, can only lurk beneath the waterline. This area between high and low tide hosts an extraordinary diversity of life. But, like mussels, organisms that live here must cope with spending long periods out of the water when the tide is low. The indigenous people tell us that Raven, in his effort to provide for the people, is responsible. One day, Raven wanted to eat some tasty sea urchins, but the old woman of the tides had them all safely covered up underwater. Raven, being very clever, dove into the water and used the bull kelp to pull himself down to the bottom, where he scooped up the delicious sea urchins. He returned to the beach and was enjoying his feast when the old woman of the tides came along. She chided him for being so bold, but Raven began to stick her with sea urchin spines until she finally agreed to keep the tide low for a few hours every day, so that the Tlingit people would always have easy access to delicious food.
Our people have a saying, Yan wu si katain, yan wu tutsi ne yi we na dako, which translates to, when the tide is out, the table is set.
When the tide is out, there is plenty for all. Almost every land creature that lives in Glacier Bay has been seen feasting at low tide. The lower bay is where the power of the tidal currents plays its most dominant role. The water here is never placid. Swift currents keep the waters churning, thoroughly mixing and distributing nutrients. Zooplankton thrive, as do small schooling fish that feed on them. The abundance of these small schooling fish is staggering. It is enough to draw humpback whales to the bay each spring from their wintering grounds near Hawaii. An adult whale can eat about 2,000 pounds of these small fish every day throughout the summer, and whales aren't the only things that eat them. Other animals, such as sea anemones, allow the currents to bring food to them, cleaning up the scraps. Here in the lower bay, land has had the most time to recover from the effects of the glaciers. Streams run clear and are used by the salmon as nurseries. 2 to 4 years ago, these salmon emerged from this stream as fingerlings and fed on the zooplankton in the bay before finding their way to the open ocean. They have now returned to complete their life's journey. Once rare in Glacier Bay, sea otters are now plentiful. Their population has grown from near extinction due to fur trade hunting in the 1700s to extraordinary numbers. Their return is responsible for the lush kelp forests we see along the outer coast and adjacent bay waters. Sea otters feed on sea urchins, which are grazers. The urchins scour the ocean bottom in search of algae to eat. Where urchins become plentiful, the kelp forest will disappear. Once otters bring the urchin population down, the kelp returns. Otters have a voracious appetite, eating as much as 25% of their body weight every day. They do this to keep their body temperature up in these frigid waters, as they have small fat reserves. Their healthy appetite puts pressure on anything the otters like to eat. With the otter population exploding, the crab population has been decimated as the ecosystem's balance continues to evolve. While areas inside Glacier Bay are protected from the full force of storms, the outer coast is a rough, unforgiving wilderness that includes the 150 miles of coastline. It is a twisting shoreline, rugged and wild, that must endure the full brunt of storms that blow in off the Gulf of Alaska. Forces that rage on the surface contrast with the relative calm of the underwater world. After establishing a rock anchor, kelp, a brown alga, begins to photosynthesize and grow. Its long, hollow structure can grow over 5 inches per day, reaching more than 60 feet in length. Bull kelp is held aloft by a gas-filled float. The long blades streaming off the float form a canopy, creating a world of light and shadow for the creatures beneath. The blades of the giant kelp create an underwater forest that provides habitat for a myriad of animals. Snails and colonies of small animals called bryozoans live on the blades of the kelp. This orange peel nudibranch foils predators by secreting a toxic chemical, making it very unpalatable. Dusky rockfish form large schools as there is safety in numbers. This quillback raises its dorsal fin in a territorial display that hopefully frightens predators. The lingcod favors the dense kelp forest in order to ambush its prey. Stellar sea lions patrol looking for fish and octopus. These large apex predators can weigh up to 1 ton and have incredible agility, strength, and speed. However, life can still be dangerous when near the top of the food chain. Killer whales cruise these waters looking for sea lions and seals. The giant Pacific octopus leaves its den at night to feed. Its camouflage is even more effective in the dark, helping it to avoid sea lions and other predators. Jellies are commonly found in these waters. Their beautiful translucent bodies disguise the fact that these animals are efficient predators that come in assorted shapes and sizes. Their tentacles contain stinging cells that immobilize and capture prey. Some, like this tiny stalked jelly, resemble plants and live attached to the kelp blades. Each of its 8 sets of tentacles captures zooplankton as they drift by. The lion's mane jelly can grow over 6 feet in diameter, with tentacles 30 feet long. Its elegance belies its deadly sting. Yet somehow, the small medusa fish has earned a reprieve. Immune to the jelly's poison, it seeks protection behind this curtain of death. The bay's landscapes provide a feast for the eyes and the mind as only wildness can. Even before designation as a national monument in 1925, the bay captured the imaginations of scientists. Today, this national park and preserve continues to intrigue. It is a living laboratory for researchers trying to unlock its many mysteries and understand the delicate role that humans can play in balancing the use and preservation of this very complex ecosystem. The waters and the creatures that live here know nothing of the designations bestowed upon them. Currents and the life they carry swirl beyond boundaries and borders. They connect to an ocean that encircles the globe. We cannot see, nor do we understand all the intricate workings of the underwater world. But as we watch nature's dramas unfold each day, or as we marvel at the whales that return to the bay each summer, perhaps we can agree that there is something precious in these mysteries. We can also acknowledge that what happens here and in the far reaches of the world's oceans can touch us in ways we cannot yet fathom. The choices we make today will determine what our children will discover beneath the reflections tomorrow. For what they find will be a reflection of ourselves.